Thanks so much for being with us here. We do want to get into more of these top headlines. Breaking news coming in out of the British royal family.
New insider reports allege that Queen Camilla has quietly withdrawn from the king's care just as His Majesty's health took a critical downturn, igniting a wave of fury across Britain. Has the Queen Consort abandoned her duty and her husband in pursuit of power? But that no longer matters. Prince William, statement issued at Kensington Palace, the 5th of October 2025. King Charles had to spend a short time in hospital today. It was 9:47 a.m. on a gray October morning when Prince William stepped before the cameras outside Clarence House, his expression grave, his words deliberate. "My father's condition remains under close medical supervision. His strength of will is remarkable, but these past weeks have been extraordinarily difficult for us all." In fewer than 30 seconds, the heir to the British throne confirmed what royal watchers had feared for months. King Charles III's health has entered a critical stage. The prince's statement, though calm on the surface, was layered with coded phrasing recognizable to those versed in royal communication. Close medical supervision and difficult weeks are the palace's preferred euphemisms for severe decline. According to the royal household's own protocols, such language is authorized only when a sovereign's condition, passivity, affects his capacity to perform constitutional functions for an indefinite period. In plain terms, Charles's health is now deemed unstable enough to warrant partial delegation of authority. William's remarks were released simultaneously through the court circular and distributed to all major media outlets by the Press Association. The statement bore his personal signature, an unusual step that indicates the king was unable to approve its final wording himself. Buckingham Palace later issued a brief follow-up. His Majesty continues to receive treatment for his previously disclosed form of cancer. Doctors remain optimistic, but have advised a period of intensive rest and limited public activity. No further detail was provided, yet insiders confirm that the intensive rest phrase conceals a serious medical intervention. Sources at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, where Charles has been receiving care since early 2024, quietly confirmed that the king recently began a second phase of immunotherapy, part of an aggressive attempt to halt the spread of lymphoma cells discovered earlier this year. The procedure reportedly involves targeted monoclonal antibody infusions, a treatment used only in advanced stages of the disease. While success rates have improved globally, such therapies come with heavy side effects: fatigue, cognitive fog, and risk of infection. Royal aides have discreetly rearranged the king's schedule to compensate. For months, subtle but undeniable changes have been visible in Charles's public appearances. At the Commonwealth Trust event in July, he appeared thinner, his face slightly drawn. During the Highland Games in September, cameras caught the king gripping his walking stick tightly, his right hand trembling slightly as he raised it to wave. Even the palace's official photographs, typically edited for composure, show a noticeable loss of muscle tone. Perhaps most striking was his brief encounter with hospital volunteers in Birmingham in early October. Witnesses recall a moment when the monarch paused mid-sentence, visibly out of breath. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give when you're holding something back, said one attendee. Within hours, several scheduled engagements were cancelled for precautionary reasons. The data confirms the visual cues. Since July, King Charles has cancelled or postponed 11 official engagements, including 2 overseas visits and 3 royal patronage ceremonies. That figure represents nearly 40% of his planned autumn schedule, according to royal correspondents who monitor the court circular. When the palace first announced in February that the king was undergoing treatment for a form of cancer, the wording carefully avoided naming the disease. Medical experts at the time speculated that such reticence implied a hematologic or lymphatic cancer conditions, often treated in secrecy due to their unpredictable progression. Subsequent investigative reporting by The Guardian and The Times confirmed that Charles had been under observation at Addenbrooke's since late January 2024. Hospital records, verified by multiple sources, revealed he had been admitted for an enlarged prostate, but subsequent scans detected abnormal lymphatic growth. The king's private physician, Sir Hugh Fitzjames, is said to have advised immediate oncologic assessment. That assessment, according to a senior palace aide, changed everything. The treatment plan required long recovery periods, leading to the king's reduced public workload. In July, Queen Camilla told reporters her husband was doing fine and refusing to slow down. But by late August, aides began referring to his condition as chronic and energy sensitive. William's statement this week marks the first time a royal heir has spoken publicly about the reigning monarch's health since the Queen's final months in 2022. Behind the palace walls, the family's emotional landscape is tense. Queen Camilla, by all accounts, remains fiercely protective, some say possessively so. Aides close to Sandringham describe her as the gatekeeper, personally vetting who may visit the king and when. That control has drawn quiet frustration from other senior royals, particularly Princess Anne, who has reportedly urged more transparency about Charles's condition. More controversially, Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, has re-emerged in the royal orbit, attending private dinners and advising his mother on media strategy. His presence has triggered public debate. Many Britons view him as a civilian intruder in constitutional matters, while tabloids speculate he is positioning himself to influence decisions around the king's recovery. Social media commentary has been scathing. Hashtags like #NotRoyalBlood and #KeepItInTheFamily have trended across X, formerly Twitter, for days. As the king's strength wanes, Princess Catherine and Princess Anne have become the monarchy's dual stabilizers. Catherine, already balancing her own recovery, has discreetly taken over several ceremonial duties, visiting military veterans and children's hospitals, reinforcing the compassionate image the monarchy depends on. Anne, meanwhile, operates behind the scenes. According to The Telegraph, she recently convened a continuity review with senior courtiers, mapping how constitutional duties could be divided if Charles becomes unable to perform them for an extended period. A document known as the Councillors of State's Schedule has already been quietly updated, listing William and Anne as primary signatories. In public, these measures are described as routine protocol. Privately, they suggest preparation for an eventual regency. Every image, every statement, and every absence now carries the weight of speculation. The palace press office is said to be working around the clock to manage information flow, issuing health bulletins only after approval from both the king's physicians and William's private secretary. The goal, according to one media advisor, is to control tone without revealing too much truth. Still, reality is leaking through the palace gates. Each cancelled engagement, each brief photo of the king's drawn face, deepens public anxiety. The monarchy is entering a stage no one openly prepared for a living sovereign, whose capacity may fade before his reign does. And as Britain holds its breath, one question now defines the national mood. Who truly leads when the king can no longer stand at the front? When Prince William delivered his brief but weighty statement on his father's health, it marked more than a public acknowledgement. It signaled a constitutional tremor. Within 48 hours, royal aides quietly began implementing Operation Continuity, a confidential protocol designed for moments when a monarch's illness could compromise state affairs. Though the term was never meant to reach the public, sources close to the Privy Council confirmed that William now receives daily intelligence briefings previously reserved for the sovereign. The subtle transfer of responsibility executed without fanfare represents the most significant internal power adjustment since the late Queen Elizabeth II's final months. Behind palace doors, the chronology of King Charles's illness paints a far more complex picture than official statements suggest. According to hospital insiders, His Majesty began targeted immunotherapy for lymphoma in late February 2024, a regimen known for alternating cycles of improvement and relapse. The king responded positively through spring, resuming a partial workload in May. But by July, blood work revealed reduced lymphocyte counts and declining renal function, both red flags for toxicity buildup. Doctors at Addenbrooke's hospital adjusted the dosage, yet fatigue and dizziness persisted. The king's private physician, Sir Hugh Fitz-James, reportedly recommended a temporary cessation of public appearances. Charles, characteristically stubborn, refused. He said duty was the best medicine, recalls one aide, but his body began saying otherwise. By September 14, following a fainting spell during a private meeting with Commonwealth envoys, the king's condition was classified as clinically fragile. According to medical reports viewed by The Times, he was admitted overnight for observation and administered intravenous hydration and anti-nausea treatment. The next day, Camilla publicly downplayed the event, calling it just exhaustion. The official line that the king's prognosis remained optimistic masked the deeper concern among his physicians. The cancer had shown signs of systemic strain. In medical terms, it was no longer a localized challenge. It had become an endurance battle. The plan was first drafted decades ago, under Queen Elizabeth, outlining how royal duties would be redistributed if the sovereign became medically incapacitated. But in practice, it had never been deployed until now. As of early October, William and Princess Anne were quietly appointed as lead counselors of state, authorized to sign documents, receive briefings, and chair private meetings in the king's name. The arrangement is constitutional but rare, a de facto dual regency in all but title. A government source told The Guardian, The phrase within Whitehall is soft transition. It's not abdication, it's survival management. Catherine, meanwhile, has emerged as the monarchy's visible heart, attending events the king would once have led, from veterans' memorials to hospital visits. Her poised yet visibly subdued demeanor has become a mirror of public sentiment, resilience wrapped in worry. The palace has turned to her, says royal historian Dr. Helena Langford. She projects stability at a time when the nation senses fragility. While William and Anne coordinate the official machinery of succession planning, another force works in quieter corridors. Queen Camilla. Multiple insiders describe her as increasingly protective and possessive of the king's medical environment. Every visitor, every briefing, passes through her. One aide claims, she decides who gets 5 minutes and who gets none. Panel 1. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, a well-known food critic and television personality, has reportedly taken a more active role behind the scenes, serving as a liaison for his mother's communications office. His sudden presence at several palace meetings raised eyebrows among courtiers. He's not royal, not staff, but somehow he's everywhere, another aide noted. The optics have not been kind. When photos surfaced of Tom leaving Sandringham in late September, the same day the king's medical team convened privately, public speculation exploded. Social media was flooded with accusations of family interference, and British tabloids ran headlines, questioning whether the Queen's son was meddling in matters of state. Buckingham Palace offered no denial, only a carefully worded statement. Her Majesty, the Queen maintains close involvement in all aspects of the king's well-being and receives the full support of her family. Behind the polished language, the tension is evident. William reportedly expressed frustration to senior aides, saying he did not appreciate the blurring of personal and constitutional lines. Princess Anne, ever pragmatic, is said to have intervened to cool tempers, reminding both camps that the public must never see division. Britain's attachment to its monarchy has always hinged on symbolism, the belief that the crown endures even when the person falters. But Charles's visible decline has pierced that illusion. At the state opening of Parliament in May, his speech lasted only 8 minutes, the shortest in modern history. Observers noted his hand trembled slightly as he turned the pages. During Trooping the Color, he watched from the balcony rather than horseback for the first time in decades, citing advice from physicians. Each moment, dissected in high definition across global media, added to the growing perception of frailty. A YouGov poll conducted in early October showed 68% of Britons believe the king should delegate more responsibilities to William, while 42% favor formalizing a regency should his health worsen. In public, William avoids such language. Privately, aides say he has accepted the inevitability of assuming full royal duties sooner than anyone anticipated. He doesn't want to be seen as taking power, says one insider. But the truth is, he already has. Behind the grandeur of gilded corridors, the royal household operates in near-constant crisis mode. Meetings once centered on state banquets now focus on contingency planning and medical confidentiality. Staff describe an atmosphere of suspended breath. Catherine spends much of her time at Adelaide Cottage with their children, but remains in regular contact with the Prime Minister's office, a role previously handled by the king. Anne continues her tireless routine of state duties, the monarchy's most dependable workhorse, moving from county to county with characteristic stoicism. Camilla maintains her public composure, but is rarely seen smiling. Her circle insists she is holding everything together. William's team, meanwhile, has become the monarchy's operational core, managing logistics, public appearances, and foreign correspondence with military precision. But the unspoken truth remains. The king's condition is deteriorating, and Britain is living through a constitutional transition masked as medical recovery. As one courtier put it bluntly, this is not the twilight of a reign, it's the slow, deliberate dawn of another. By mid-October, the royal facade of unity had begun to fracture. What started as a quiet medical crisis had evolved into a communications war. One fought not with proclamations, but with headlines and carefully curated images. Prince William's tone remained measured and empathetic. Each of his appearances, a brief walkabout in Norfolk, a speech at a children's hospice carried a single, understated message: continuity, compassion, and calm. His publicist released photos of him holding Catherine's hand, greeting crowds, and listening to veterans. The imagery was deliberate, a portrait of moral steadiness. In contrast, Queen Camilla's camp adopted a more defensive stance. Her advisors, reportedly led by her son, Tom Parker Bowles, began pushing a narrative that the Queen was the only one, keeping palace operations functional, while others sought to manage optics, Tabloids soon echoed this line. One front page blared, "Camilla keeps the crown steady," but the strategy backfired. Social media erupted with skepticism, viewing Tom's growing involvement as opportunistic. Within 48 hours, the hashtag #NotRoyalBlood had surpassed 3 million views on X. Even traditionally sympathetic outlets like The Telegraph questioned why a food critic was briefing journalists about royal matters. William's aides quietly capitalized. Without direct confrontation, they allowed contrast to do the work. William focused on duty, Tom on exposure. Public polling shifted again. 74% of respondents now said they trusted Prince William most to represent the monarchy's future. Then came the Sandringham footage. A short video, leaked to an international outlet, showed King Charles leaving a private vehicle, pale and visibly weak, assisted by aides. His eyes were vacant, his right arm trembling as Camilla whispered to him. The palace confirmed the video's authenticity but condemned its release as an invasion of privacy. Yet the damage was done. For the first time, Britain saw its monarch vulnerable. Within hours, the narrative shifted from curiosity to alarm. Commentators began openly discussing pre-regency arrangements. In the background, tensions between William's office and Camilla's team reached a breaking point. Insiders describe a terse exchange between their private secretaries, a dispute over whether new photos of the king should be released. Camilla's camp insisted the images would prove vitality. William refused, citing dignity. "We don't parade illness," he reportedly said. Princess Anne sided with William. Her influence, though quiet, has become decisive. She now mediates between the two camps, urging restraint while continuing her relentless schedule, the monarchy's living anchor in a storm of speculation. The monarchy's greatest threat has never been scandal, it is fatigue. The public's patience for secrecy is thinning. British audiences now expect transparency in ways unimaginable during Elizabeth II's reign. A YouGov focus group summed it up bluntly. If they ask us to pray for him, they should tell us what we're praying for. Still, within the palace, silence prevails. Every new photo of Charles, thinner, frailer, yet determined, fuels the same paradox, admiration mixed with dread. And amid the whispers of succession, one truth has crystallized not through speeches, but through the nation's quiet realization. William has already become the face of the crown. The fourth week of October brought a tension that could be felt even through the palace gates. Behind Sandringham's red brick walls, Prince William and Queen Camilla met for the first time since the king's latest hospitalization, a conversation described by one insider as controlled, courteous, and cold. According to officials present, the meeting's purpose was to finalize transitional arrangements while King Charles continued his treatment. But it quickly turned personal. Camilla argued that too much responsibility was being shifted toward her stepson. William, maintaining composure, replied, "This is not about authority. It's about protecting father's legacy." Camilla's silence that followed said more than any reply could. Within her circle, the sentiment was clear she felt marginalized. And at the heart of this growing divide was her son, Tom Parker Bowles, whose involvement in palace communications had become a lightning rod for criticism. The British government, though publicly deferential, had begun to act. The Cabinet Office quietly submitted a briefing to the Privy Council, outlining a plan to formalize interim constitutional duties under the Regency Acts of 1937 and 1953. The language was bureaucratic, but the message unmistakable. Westminster was preparing for the possibility of a semi-permanent regency under William. One senior civil servant put it bluntly to the Times, "They are trying to build a bridge before the river floods." William's team, led by his private secretary, Jean-Christophe Gray, coordinated daily with Princess Anne. Together, they mapped how engagements, documents, and foreign briefings could continue seamlessly without publicly acknowledging the king's diminished capacity. The structure now in place resembles a dual monarchy in practice, though not in law. Meanwhile, Camilla insisted that she, not William, should read upcoming ceremonial addresses. Her request was quietly denied. The palace cited protocol continuity, a technical phrase meaning the heir takes precedence. While the world speculated about politics, Princess Catherine was doing something subtler, repairing the monarchy's emotional bond with the public. Her solo visits to hospitals and youth centers were not random acts of duty. They were strategically placed across regions most affected by recent polling drops in royal favorability. During one visit to a cancer center in Manchester, she told a survivor, "Hope can live alongside fear." The quote made national headlines, interpreted as both empathy for patients and a coded reflection of the royal household's struggle. She has become the emotional translator of the monarchy, noted historian Dr. Helena Langford. While others are managing the system, she's managing the soul. Behind closed doors, Catherine has reportedly acted as a mediator between William and Camilla, sending messages through Anne to reduce the noise and refocus on the king's care. Even Palisades admit, without her, this would have turned into open war. King Charles remains under treatment at Addenbrooke's, his public appearances reduced to 0. Officially, his condition is described as stable under medical supervision. Unofficially, sources confirm he has lost nearly 7 kilograms since July and now requires round-the-clock observation. Still, the palace resists transparency. When journalists pressed for updates, a spokesman said only, "His Majesty continues to rest, guided by medical advice." That phrase, guided by medical advice, now stands as the monarchy's shield in its prison. It hides pain but breeds suspicion. As the rain falls over Sandringham, Britain senses it is witnessing history's quiet turning point. A king fading from sight, a son stepping forward, and a family caught between duty and denial. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, the public waits not for a coronation, but for the truth. As October drew to a close, the whispers became headlines. What had begun as private contingency discussions within Whitehall was now an open topic across the press. Would Britain soon see a regency? The Sunday Times reported that government advisors were actively reviewing constitutional options should King Charles remain medically unfit to perform his duties by year's end. The palace did not deny it. Instead, a spokesperson offered a line that only deepened speculation. His Majesty continues to act in all matters of state where appropriate, supported by the Prince of Wales. Where appropriate, 2 words that confirmed what insiders already knew. The king was no longer governing daily affairs. Over the course of 3 weeks, William's schedule expanded dramatically. He now chaired weekly Privy Council briefings, received intelligence updates, and handled foreign correspondence tasks, once exclusively reserved for the sovereign. His understated leadership drew widespread praise. Commentators called it a new model of duty, calm, competent, and modern. I know. At the same time, the Cabinet Office quietly established a working group codenamed Silver Branch, tasked with preparing the legal mechanism for a regency declaration, if the king's doctors formally advise it. Sources say Princess Anne has been briefed to co-sign any potential transfer of powers, ensuring the process remains within the family. William has not commented publicly, but his demeanor has changed. During a recent visit to Scotland, a reporter shouted, "Is the king still in charge?" William's reply was calm. "Always. In spirit. And that's what matters most." Behind the diplomatic phrasing was a simple truth. Britain was now functioning under William's quiet stewardship. As William's stature grew, Queen Camilla's camp faltered. Her decision to release a short pre-recorded message, thanking the British people for their kindness toward His Majesty, was meant to reassure. But the video, filmed at Mill House rather than Buckingham Palace, triggered criticism. Observers saw it as an act of distance, not unity. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, fared even worse. Leaked emails suggested he had advised a PR consultant to protect the Queen's reputation from being overshadowed by the Regency narrative. Once the story broke, outrage followed. Editorials accused him of treating the crown like a brand. The Guardian headline read, "Loyalty or legacy? Where does Camilla stand?" Inside the palace, aides described a growing chill. Camilla began spending more nights away from London, while William's team quietly assumed control of royal communications. "There's no hostility," said one insider, "just silence the kind that says everything." Polls now show a sharp shift in national sentiment. 77% of Britons support William taking over the monarch's duties temporarily. Even among older demographics, traditionally loyal to Charles, the number exceeds 60%. Catherine has become the bridge between empathy and authority. Her speeches are short, sincere, and free of political undertones. At a children's charity event in Leeds, she said, "In families, there are moments we must hold one another up, even when the ground beneath us feels uncertain." The room fell silent. Commentators called it the line that defined the monarchy's humanity. Amid the soft tones of public empathy, the royal household is undergoing one of its most dramatic internal realignments in decades. Anne continues to handle the king's correspondence. Catherine focuses on morale and visibility. William presides over policy briefings, and Camilla, isolated, guards the king's privacy. But every plan, every meeting, carries a quiet acknowledgement that a chapter is ending. The crown still rests on King Charles's head, but the weight of it now sits firmly on his son's shoulders. By the first week of November, Sandringham had fallen into an almost monastic silence. The gates were closed to the public, and reporters were kept at a distance by unmarked security vehicles. Inside, King Charles remained under constant medical observation. His once rigid schedule of audiences, red boxes, and briefings had dissolved into quiet hours, punctuated by medical rounds. At 6:20 p.m., on a foggy Sunday evening, a palace aide delivered a sealed envelope to Clarence House. It bore the king's own crest and handwriting, thin but unmistakably his. The letter was addressed to "My dear son and daughter, William and Anne." Its contents, though never released in full, were confirmed by both heirs. The king's message was simple: "Let duty prevail over sentiment. I entrust the stewardship of the crown to your judgment, until such time as I may resume it or not. I ruined." With that single sentence, Charles became the first monarch in modern British history to voluntarily suspend his own reign without abdication. 2 days later, the Privy Council met in private session. Presided over by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the council formally recognized Prince William as regent in practice, a constitutional phrase crafted to avoid declaring the king incapacitated. The document, signed by senior ministers and Princess Anne, was quietly deposited in the National Archives. The government released a synchronized statement: "His Majesty remains the sovereign. His duties will, with his blessing, be carried out by the Prince of Wales until further notice." For the first time since the 19th century, Britain had entered a living regency. There were no fanfares, no public ceremonies, only a short photograph issued by Buckingham Palace. William and Catherine in a simple room, reviewing documents under soft light. The caption read, "Service continues." Queen Camilla did not attend the council meeting. The following day, she was photographed boarding a flight to Florence, accompanied by 2 aides. Her office later stated she would spend time privately reflecting and supporting His Majesty's ongoing treatment. In truth, sources confirmed she had withdrawn after weeks of mounting pressure and media criticism. Public trust in her role had fallen below 30%, the lowest figure for any royal in decades. As for Tom Parker Bowles, he vanished entirely from the public scene. His last act, an unsigned op-ed defending family loyalty in difficult times, was met with ridicule. The piece was retracted within hours. Even his mother's courtiers privately acknowledged he had become a distraction too large to manage. One palace insider summarized it bluntly: "Camilla fought for control. Tom fought for relevance. Both lost." On the evening of November 9th, Britain tuned in for what was billed as a message from Sandringham. William appeared behind a modest desk, dressed in black and navy, a single lamp beside him. His tone was steady, reflective the echo of both his father's dignity and his mother's sincerity. "My father remains our sovereign, and his wisdom continues to guide us. But at his request, I will carry the torch of duty on his behalf. This moment is not an end, but a passage one defined not by power, but by care." He thanked the medical staff attending to the king, the public for their patience, and those who serve quietly through uncertainty. His closing line, now quoted across the world, captured the quiet transformation of the monarchy. "We do not inherit crowns, we inherit burdens, and we carry them together." The speech drew over 48 million views across global platforms within 24 hours. Leaders from Canada, Australia, and New Zealand sent messages of support. President Biden's statement called William's address a masterclass in duty under grace. As the constitutional dust settled, 2 women anchored the transition. Princess Anne became the regency's chief liaison to the government, overseeing protocol and ensuring the king's remaining decisions were honored. "She operates like a general," remarked a Downing Street aide. Catherine, meanwhile, emerged as the monarchy's emotional core. Her public presence increased dramatically from hospital openings to environmental forums. Yet, behind the composure, witnesses noticed a quiet melancholy. One aide described seeing her pause in Sandringham's chapel, staring at the stained glass depicting the late Queen Elizabeth II. "She doesn't speak in grand gestures," he said. "She just endures, and that endurance holds the family together." The British press, often merciless, responded with rare unity. The Guardian called it a regency of grace. The Times described William's leadership as the steady pulse of a modern monarchy. Even The Sun, known for its sensationalism, ran the headline, "The king still lives, the crown still moves." Public sentiment stabilized. Polls show 82% approval for William and Catherine's stewardship, while global interest in the royal family surged. Analysts noted that for the first time in decades, the monarchy felt both human and functional. Weeks later, photographers captured a single image through the trees of Sandringham. King Charles, seated in a wheelchair, wrapped in a tartan blanket, watching the sunset over the estate's gardens. Camilla was not beside him, Anne was. He appeared frail but calm, hands folded over a book. According to a palace source, He had asked Anne a simple question. "Are they managing well?" Anne replied, "Better than you think." The king smiled. For a nation long defined by ceremony, this was a new kind of history not written in coronations or funerals, but in the quiet dignity of letting go. And as the autumn light faded over Sandringham, Britain understood that the reign of Charles had not ended in defeat, but in grace, and that a new era had already begun.